Hello, movie lovers. Welcome home. My name is Amy Henserling, and you are listening to Watch This List Unplugged. We are in episode 5 with my buddy Rob, who is returning, Mosquito Dragon Rob, for
That's what they call me.
A
That's what Mum called me.
crazy bonkers midnight movie called Never Too Young to Die, which to me sounds like a James Bond movie. I don't know about you, Rob, but this kind of
I think this measures up to any of the Bond films. Really, I think a Bond film would feel flattered
to be in the same
to be compared
league.
to Never Too Young to Die.
It's like The World Is Not Enough, Tomorrow Never Dies. I'm thinking of like the Pierce Brosnan era of Bond titles, actually.
Yeah.
Now that I'm like analyzing it in my head. But yeah, Never Too Young to Die, 1986. But before we get into the movie, I thought to ask Rob what his favorite 80s score / soundtrack is, because this movie is so like the vibe is so 80s that I was like, I have to ask him this question in response. So tell us that, and also hi Rob, good to have you back.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Did you ask that question because you thought maybe this movie has the best 80s soundtrack?
Do you actually think it does?
No, and
okay.
definitely not. I mean, it's famous for its theme song, which I'm not gonna sing here because
No.
I think that would hurt my lungs and my throat,
And our ears.
yeah, as it does in the movie. Actually, it's pretty. It's just terrible. It's just such a bad song.
It is a bad song. Yeah.
No, okay. So 80s sound. I don't know. It's because 80s was the decade of the soundtrack and the soundtrack album that everyone would buy, and it would have lots of hit songs, and there'd be lots of video clips for the songs that had lots of bits from the movie in it and that kind of thing. But if you say soundtrack, and I think it was also the decade of the rock score, and I think if we're talking rock score, then there's only one answer really, and that's Queen's rock score for Flash Gordon.
Oh wow. Okay.
1980. Yeah. Amazing. The only thing with that though is it's 1980, so is 1980 really the 80s, or is it kind of the hangover from the 70s?
Yeah, I was about to say that's not really. Does it? I mean, does it? I haven't seen it, but does it sound like what?
Oh
you
my
would
god, you haven't
associate...
lived.
Oh, great.
You got to see Flash Gordon. Like that could have been a midnight movie. That would have been a good one.
Really?
Yeah.
Who's
It's a lot of
in
fun.
it?
Sam Jones.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, no, that's the right reaction. I think it's the only movie he was ever in until he turned up in Ted years later.
Okay, so you picked one that could be classified as a midnight movie for the answer to this question.
Great, but that's got to look. So if you wanted something that's more 80s, I don't know if it's my favorite, but I think a really good choice for rock score for the 80s would be Wang Chung's score for To Live and Die in LA.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing more 80s than that score.
Yeah, and it's just that's just a kick-ass film.
It's such a good movie.
I love that movie. That was one that you almost picked for your Gritty Crime top 5 episode, and I was kind of sad that we didn't watch it, but we did Sexy Beast instead. So
yeah, only a movie like Sexy Beast could have knocked that out of the top 5. But,
yeah, and then I ended up buying it on DVD and watching it, and I just it's so good and it's so crazy.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
no, it's a great film, but that's an unironically great film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which you probably couldn't really say about Never Too Young to Die. So I don't want to come across as like one of those smarmy. I find things ironically funny, but it's impossible. I challenge anyone to watch this movie and not be both genuinely entertained.
And
but it's the ultimate, like, what the fuck fuck did I just watch?
Okay, so set this up for us, Rob. So, okay, Never Too Young to Die. It stars John Stamos, and this is pre-Full House, because I know that's what everyone's going to be thinking. Uncle Jesse. This is a year before he did Full House, and then it has Gene Simmons and Vanity. But go ahead and tell us. I always want to know why somebody thinks this is a midnight movie, but I think that we're going to get to that answer just in you casually discussing it, just period.
Yeah, so, I mean, so should we sort of synopsize it very briefly?
Sure, if you can.
Okay, let's see.
What a task.
Right. So, John Stamos, young, fresh-faced, pert-buttocked
baby face
John Stamos. We see him at the beginning jumping on a trampoline, and we hear this really bizarre theme song. He has his own theme song.
Yes.
His name is Lance Stargrove. Turns out he's the son of a super secret agent, someone who is clearly supposed to be like James Bond, and is even played by George Lazenby. And this is the sort of movie, you know, other films might have got Roger Moore or Sean Connery to do that, but this is not that sort of budget, so they got George Lazenby. No. And not really a spoiler, I don't think, because it happens right at the beginning of the film. His father gets killed by a double agent who treacherously shoots him. And for some reason, Lance inherits his secret agenthood. I don't know how that works. I don't even know what agency this guy works for. It's not CIA.
Let's also preface this by saying that this is one of the craziest scripts I've ever heard in my life. Like, I don't know if you've ever played the game Balderdash.
Yes.
But it sounds like a movie that would be synopsized on one of those plots of Balderdash.
Yes.
Where it's like a hodgepodge of like, there's super secret agents, and then he's a gymnast, and then he also like has a farm, and there's these like insane bikers. So I'm sorry, but like, yeah, it's crazy the amount of like different disparate elements that they just like shove into a blender.
Yeah, it's very much that. It's throw everything at the wall and see if it sticks. So
yeah,
I mean, we need to mention the villain, who is the absolute highlight of the movie, is Gene Simmons.
Yes.
Of Kiss, in a performance of... It's legend. I mean, this is legendary levels of hamming it up. I mean, you think you've seen actors ham it up. You haven't seen it until you've seen Gene Simmons play a character called Velvet von Ragnar, who is a murderous, megalomaniacal hermaphrodite. Just to be clear.
Just say that 3 times fast, huh?
Yeah, I can't. Not trans, like hermaphrodite. So much is made of that. That he is a man and a woman.
And a woman. Yeah.
And, I mean, if you know anything about Gene Simmons and how sleazy he liked to play it, just in general, then maybe you've got some idea how he would choose to approach a role as a hermaphrodite. And he's got this mad scheme to poison the water supply of LA. And he happens to have an army of Mad Max road punks, basically. Is the best way I could describe them.
Yes.
Doing his bidding. So it's up to young Lance Stargrove to save the water supply from this guy with the help of Vanity, who I think was his dad's lover.
Yes.
And then she immediately kind of... Well, they have this weird standoffish kind of will they, won't they kind of thing. And then there's this amazing seduction scene later on involving an apple.
Amazing is really... I don't know if that's the right word, but yes. It's also got this... I was messaging Rob as I was watching this movie, and I thought, like, I told him this is High School Musical meets Mad Max, because the like John Stamos is very Zac Efron,
Yeah.
and then she's actually strangely very Vanessa Hudgens. Like they have this very strange, wholesome slash like I don't even know how to describe that, Rob. And then it's on
But
the
then
backdrop of
then
like,
it'll get really sleazy all of a sudden too. It's
Yeah.
completely bizarre. So they go to a bar at some point, and there's a trans waitress cracking on to John Stamos. And then Vanity says, "Well, he's with me," and she says, "We'll look after him, or I'll rip your eyes out," or something like that. And it's just they seem equally at home in this very sleazy. It feels like a kids movie, except they'll drop the F-bomb all the time, and then there's some sort of fairly. It's not massively graphically violent, but it's pretty violent. So it can't be a kids' film. I don't know. It's really weird. Apparently, the guy who wrote the script first saw this as a really dead serious effort at making a secret agent movie.
oh my god,
He thought it was going to be huge, and he became the producer. He then hired the director, a guy called Gil Bettman, that household name of directing. And he wanted to play at camp. Now, the reason why, the first time I saw this movie, I could not figure out if it was joking or if it was deadly serious. It's really hard to tell. The most obviously comedic bits are Gene Simmons and whatever he's doing. It's just so crazy.
I would almost put it in like the same realm as like The Room,
Yeah. I mean,
where the person making it seems like they took it seriously and they thought it was like actually a good genre film, but then you're watching it and you're like, does this person know what this is?
yeah, I think maybe the answer is the director thought it was funny. Gene Simmons thought it was funny. But at all times, the producer was saying, "Don't ruin my film by making it too funny." And the end result is something that has an identity complex. You can't figure out what it is. But I mean, the Gene Simmons stuff is just so nuts because, like, can we talk about, like, there's a big reveal. Did you know? Did you see the big? I saw the big reveal coming, like, from the first scene. It's so obvious.
Yes.
What's going on? I mean, you can tell.
Yes.
So, can we? I think we should talk about it. Spoilers. Anyone who hasn't seen it, but it's not really a spoiler.
Rob, no, you can't do that though, because people actually are going to want to see this movie.
Oh, no one's.
And then they'd have to turn this off.
No one is going. I can't. It's one of the funniest things about the movie is that it thinks this is a twist when it is so obvious right from the beginning. And I'm not saying that as someone who's like just really smart at picking apart plots, because I'm really not. But there is a character who we find out later is in disguise, and it's just really quite obvious that it's the same actor with a bad wig on at the beginning.
Oh yes, okay, that's fine. I would say.
Can I reveal that? Because the way that is revealed.
Sure, Rob.
So we're
already sunk.
So we've got George Lazenby right at the beginning is shot in the back by his partner Carruthers. Who is clearly Gene Simmons. It's it's clearly Gene Simmons. At this point, we've also seen Gene Simmons as Velvet von Ragnar. So I think anyone who watches this movie will just be like, okay, so obviously this guy in the CIA or whatever, whoever these guys are, is the bad guy. But when that reveal is done, it's done as this big surprise, and Gene Simmons even says, "I'm Ragnar," when he takes it. He takes his sunglasses off and he's got the big eye makeup on. Oh my god, it's just fantastic. It's just so funny.
It also is like kind of like Austin Powers, right? Didn't you think of that too, or did you when you just rewatched it?
I didn't, but it's
okay.
It's Austin Powers. You know exactly what it's doing. You know, it's a parody.
Right.
This movie is I think it's sort of trying to be a bit of a parody, but it just doesn't realise how much it's embarrassing itself at the same time, which sounds really mean-spirited, but it's just so funny the way that this stuff plays out.
And we have to talk about like we should talk about the seduction scene, but the way that this film is edited, especially in that part where it's like cut, it's almost like in a way, I suppose Midnight Movie is really apt for this. You really should not watch this during the day, because you will just the technical part of it and the way in which it's done will be so distracting to you. You really do kind of need to be at a different state of mind.
So this leads us on to the question about why would I pick this as a midnight movie?
Yes, tell me why.
I think
out of anything you could have picked, because you watch a lot of movies, Rob.
Maybe it's just it's because I'm not as young as I used to be. But like, if I'm watching like a movie marathon, or I'm going to watch a midnight movie for whatever the context is, there's a very real, serious danger of just falling asleep. So I need something that's gonna this movie will stop you from falling asleep, because it's very funny, and I think the whole nonsensical nature of it helps you keep alert. You can't relax into watching. You can't sort of go, yeah, okay, so there's the guy, and that's going to be, because all of a sudden, Gene Simmons will get a close up of Gene Simmons's breasts, and you're just like, hang on a minute, that's that shouldn't have happened. What movie am I watching? Hang on, and your brain will be like, I need to make sense of this somehow. I need to wake up.
So it's almost like you're saying it's like sensory overload, or like where your brain is attuned to how much newness and like not nuance especially, but just the variety of what goes on in this thing.
I think it's a jolt of neurological caffeine to your head that will energize you for the rest of the night. And actually, because your point about editing,
yeah,
I don't think the editing is bad. And actually, the pacing of the film is really good. I watched it again last night, and I noticed.
Okay, last night. Yeah.
I didn't even. It got to like 55 minutes in or something, and I was like, I thought it was only 25. Like it's quiet. It moves really quickly along really weird rails and goes to really weird places. But it is actually quite entertaining. And in fact, even last night I was watching it thinking, I don't know if this is as bad as I thought it was. It's like, it's totally, because Rob, I knew everything that was going to happen. Maybe that softened it for me. And I'm like, this is actually quite fun. So yeah, I think it works well for that sort of reason, because it is funny. Sometimes on purpose, sometimes by accident, more often by accident, I think.
Or like in spite of itself.
Yeah, and it's very high energy, and it's got a lot going on, and it's just a fun time. So,
and it's also got like he's got like an Asian sidekick nerd dude.
Yeah, got the Asian nerd friend, who is basically his version of Q, because he gives him all these weird contraptions, like he gives him this one at the beginning of the film. He gives him this one little square of chewing gum, which has a homing beacon in it, and it's like, it literally looks like someone's got a juicy fruit and like wedged a SIM card in there or something, and then he's like, you chew it up, and then you can stick it on anything and track where it goes. But there's like how he tracks it, what he uses to track it with. He doesn't have a monitor or anything like that, and he uses about 10 of these over the course of the movie, never having chewed it and never having been given any more than one. I mean, it's just, there's some very strange gadgets that he's given, including that weird gun that the guy makes.
Yeah, and then the whole time they're like saying like, where's the disc? Where's the disc? So you have this like feeling of like the sense of urgency that they're trying to like move the plot forward, and then you're like, what's the disc? Like, does it even matter? I mean, it's kind of like there's so much like, just like you said, like thrown to the wall, where you're just like, how much of this is actually going to matter at some point, and then how much of it is just like,
I made a note. I was like actually paying attention to what the disc was this time, because I think the first time I just was like, okay, it's a MacGuffin, whatever, it doesn't matter.
It's MacGuffin, right? That's what I thought. Yeah.
But it's like none of this movie makes sense, right? So he's going to poison the water supply. He is headquartered. This is Velvet von Ragnar. he hangs out at the dam, like he lives there. I think that's where his gang is, and he catches George Lazenby in the first place because he's doing a raid on his headquarters. But then he catches him and he's like, now give me the disc. And I was like, what? Why would he? So he's both stolen the disc, but instead of running away with it and telling everyone, he's now raiding his location. It makes no sense. And then it turns out that the disc is like the plans for the dam and how the dam works. And it's like, is there literally no other source of this information in LA apart from one floppy disk? And it is literally one of those plastic floppy disks when we finally see this thing.
This would be a perfect movie to watch where, like, at the end of it, you just, like, make a list of questions. Like, I've seen people do this.
So many questions in this one.
There's, like, I can't stand this movie, and I'm sorry to everyone in my life because I always get discredited for hating this, but, like, Primer is like that.
Oh, yeah.
Where there's, like, a chart. And then it has, like, where people have literally spent precious time analyzing and asking questions and trying to clarify things. I feel like on a, lesser level, you could do that with Never Too Young to Die.
Yeah, but
just, like,
with Primer, I'm not a huge fan of Primer either. I'm kind of with you on that. But that's because I think it's a bit boring. But, and it's kind of like guys sitting in rooms and lying, like, whatever.
Insufferable.
It's pretty uncinematic. But anyway, the difference is, if you did it with Primer, it would probably make sense. It has been well thought out. For all its other faults, I'm sure it's a really smart movie, and I think they've really figured out how it works. I'm guessing that. I gave up. But this one, there's no satisfactory answer to these questions.
And then they would spawn more and more questions.
Yes.
But it kind of, it's almost like a movie where I feel like you should just not be completely sober. Like, you should not just be all there. You need to be a little bit removed. And then maybe you'll get into a higher mental plane of existence and you will be able to be like, illumination.
Shouldn't be sober, shouldn't be alone. And that's why it's a good reason for it being a midnight movie. It's a good crowd movie, for sure. Because people will laugh at stuff that you don't notice. There is so much crazy stuff going on at any given point in time.
So when did you see this, or why did you see this the first time?
I saw this for the first time only a couple of years ago when it came out on Blu-ray.
Okay, so you didn't see this in the 80s.
No, but I remember the poster. I remember seeing it.
Okay.
I remember seeing it. I remember seeing it at the video store.
Okay.
And thinking, well, that looks garbage, and I'm not going to get it, even when I was 12 or whatever, however old I was in 1986, 87, 12.
Yeah.
So,
86,
yeah, I just dismissed it, but I think I always assumed it was reasonably coherent and competent, and it was only a few years ago that it's got a reputation as a cult film because it's so nuts, and I can't remember where I heard about it, but I picked up the Blu-ray sight unseen and and watched it, and I wasn't disappointed. I love this movie. Did you like?
You love it.
Did you like it or not?
No, I enjoyed it. I would say that it was
bad.
No, it
is bad.
Okay, I'm gonna tell you this because I didn't tell Rob what I thought, as I'm not gonna tell anybody what I thought until we're actually recording. But also, I have a direct quote from John Stamos, from the Hollywood Reporter. I wrote it down. I'm gonna read it to you. He says, "It's the perfect midnight movie."
There you go.
So, where people can come and dress up. So I guess that's the thing that happens. And then he said, what's the term I'm looking for? The best, worst thing you will ever see.
Yeah. I mean, that's the kind of thing. Dressing up's interesting because even his wardrobe is pretty good, right? He's got the Hawaiian shirt and the white slacks. And, that's an interesting... that's quite of its time.
And this is kind of in that category of like so bad it's good, but I wouldn't go so far as to say it's good. It's definitely fun. And
Yeah.
it's definitely like where you're gonna. It's one of those movies where you're like, "What the heck? What the heck?" Like just over and over and over throughout.
Yeah, yeah.
You're gonna be like,
I think it's one of those things where I'd be hard pressed. I was mentioning the editing before, the pacing, right? That's about the only that's generally what I say when I come out of a movie thinking that was really not good in any way, and like really bad. I can point to all the things that were bad about it,
right?
but it must have got something right because I was never bored, and it moved really well, and it was fun, not just because mainly because you're laughing at it, let's be fair. Let's be honest.
Yes.
That's the main
Yes.
reason to watch this movie.
And the novelty of it, even though you are saying it was good on a rewatch, but I think the initial novelty of it is quite
Yeah.
just.
I mean, the hermaphrodite thing to me is just sort of, it's permanently hilarious. I can't stop laughing at the whole Gene Simmons stuff. I mean, it's just,
Yeah, and he said I read an interview with him where he said it was pretty involved actually. The makeup and getting his like costume on and like everything was like hours and hours. This was not like just a simple thing.
it doesn't really look, I mean, it's, as great as he is,
Listen,
it doesn't
Rob.
look like he spent that long getting his outfit and his makeup on.
I don't know that. I mean, the crew. I mean, the level that these people are at is a little bit. It's gotta.
If he's saying that, if he's saying that, this is the guy from Kiss. I mean, he knows what it's like to sit through a lot of makeup, I would imagine. So and costume. So
Yeah, and apparently he and John Stamos are like trying to buy the rights to the film now.
Oh, okay.
Because they want to actually make this into like a cult film for real, where like
it's still
up
underseen.
there.
Yeah, I don't think it's really. I'm surprised at how underseen it is, given how perfect a cult type movie it is. Really, I mean, but Simmons
Yes.
is genuinely great. He's totally over the top, and you laugh at what he's doing, and it's really kind of all kinds of wrong. I mean, I don't even know how to interpret the sexual politics of what he's doing up there. I just think it's wrong. It just doesn't seem right.
Something about it just doesn't sit well.
Put it this way. So in the climactic fight scene, there's a moment where John Stamos gets the drop on him by biting his bra off and exposing his breast, at which point there's like this musical sting that goes, woo, like something scary had happened. And then that distracts him, and then he's able to sort of get up off the ground. I mean, it's just full of moments, just golden moments like that. I mean, this is movie magic, isn't it?
This is Rob certified movie magic.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, we were talking about Oscar bait type movies just before we started recording. No contest. I'm not going to watch Tar when I can watch Never Too Young to Die. I mean, that should have won. It was snubbed. Simmons should have won an Oscar. He really should.
Oh, yeah. This is actually an interesting conversation because we'll get way off base here, but I think it's an interesting conversation to have of like, there's all this highbrow stuff with the Academy Awards now, obviously, and they sort of don't like descend into the level, but that doesn't mean that these aren't worthy of recognition. It's just that they've become so like,
but they've always
ivory
been like that, haven't
tower.
they? I mean, there's not that many winners of Academy Awards that people go on watching because they're not actually very entertaining or much fun, or no one really actually likes them. They just pretend to every January and February, and then they give,
like I'm doing right now to catch up. I'm about to watch so many 2022
I used to do
releases.
that. I just don't do that anymore because I just realised how boring it became. Now, having said that, if they started giving out Oscars for Never Too Young to Die,
level.
you'd question really what the point of... I mean, I already question what the point of the Academy Awards is, but that would really probably kill it.
There really should be like Midnight Movie Awards.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what this
I
needs
mean,
to
what
be
do we
part
got?
of,
The best
like-
we got are the Razzies, and the Razzies suck. I hate the Razzies. I want something
the
that
Razzies are kind of insulting too.
they're very
They're
insulting.
not really.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're not supposed to want to
They're
win a
not
Razzie.
celebratory. Right. Okay, so if you had to say then, How midnight is this movie? Are you going to put it? Are you going to clock it at midnight, or do you feel like this needs to be before or after? Do you feel like you
Not
need to be in a
before.
different psychological state?
So my thoughts on this are not before midnight.
Yep. Okay.
That's a waste of weird chaotic energy that you could be unleashing further in the night.
Mm-hmm.
At least
Okay.
midnight, if not later. If you were in like some kind of all night movie marathon, you could put this one on at 3, 4. I think it would still work.
I think so too. I think that's where I would clock it. I would go a little bit earlier in the hours of the morning, just so that you
later than midnight. You mean
later than midnight, earlier in the morning, later than midnight, where your mind would be more sponge-like.
That's okay. I'm happy with that. I mean, that's like under promising and over delivering. You asked for a midnight movie. I think giving you a 2 a.m. movie is. I think I've exceeded the target. Is that how that works?
Yes.
Or have I just got it wrong?
Let's just say that. And then I've also got John Stamos on record saying it's the perfect midnight movie.
And
so
he's the ultimate authority on these sorts of matters, particularly when it involves Never Too Young to Die, because he was in it.
Yeah. Case closed.
Yep.
So everybody needs to watch this movie. Please also read Rob's review of it. I quite enjoyed reading your review right before
I read that in preparation. I thought, what did I think about this last time? And it is a little bit the written equivalent of me just going, what's going on with this movie? It's almost like a kind of pleasurable panic attack in writing. So if you want to read something like that, by all means.
Go for it. Yes. Thank you for coming on, Rob. Everybody watch
Pleasure.
Never Too Young to Die. Report back, and we'll see you at the movies.